وسلم تسليما ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. Alhamdulillah. We covered Tahara yesterday and Najasa, which is the impurities. And so before we get into the prayer, we'll look at the removing Najasa quickly. And then you have to remove najasa before you can pray, because you need al-tahara min al-hadath wa min al-khabath. And when we do the wudu, he'll go into detail about the hadath. Khabath is anything that's impure, so you have to be free of impure substances. If there's a ha'il between it, then it's permissible, like a baby that has a diaper on. So, or if you're praying on a prayer mat and underneath it is najasa, but the actual place that you pray on has to be pure. Even if there was najasa, when you went into sajda in the empty space between your chest and your knees, it's still considered valid. But to remove najasa, you need purifying water. And obviously, if you get into real details, you find, like, for instance, in Syria, the women do an extra rinse cycle on the clothes, in the washing machine, because if you put detergent in, the water's not purifying it, and the initial rinse cycle is actually contaminated by the detergent, so they actually do a second rinse cycle for that reason. So that's something to think about. Also, if a woman has a long dress, which is done for sitr, not for any other reason, it has to be done specifically because she's wearing it out of modesty, then anything that soils it as she's walking is ma'fu anhu, it's excused, as long as it's not wet. So the Prophet ﷺ was asked about that, and he said, يُطَهِرُهُ مَا وَرَاهُ, what's after it will purify it. So, and then also, you shouldn't pray if somebody who's not a Muslim gives you some clothes or something that he wore, you shouldn't pray in it, and not because of najasa or anything, but because they don't have the same ihtiraz, they don't guard themselves from najasa. The same is true for a janitor's clothing. These are all things that they mention in there. So things, and then children who don't know about that also. And the basic, if you have some kind of exudate or something like that, the amount of what they call a baghla, dirham al-baghla, which is the mule's dirham, if you look on the inner front legs of a mule, there's a size, that's the size that the fuqaha identified. It's about $50. That amount is excused. So if you prayed with that amount of exudate or something on, sometimes you find that on your clothes. Those things are excused. And then also mud, things, even if there was najasa in a place, but the rain comes and gets it, it's excused unless it's aynun najasa. So if you actually see feces or something that's on you, if it's just mud and there's a possibility that it was mixed but it's not clear, then that's excused. And then also, if something falls on you and you're doubtful about it, and you ask somebody who's trustworthy and they know the area, then that's safe. Otherwise, you're supposed to wash things off. Now about the the dog, the wulugh al-kalb. If a dog, wulugh is actually to go in and how the dog licks. So if a dog simply was sniffing in a thing, you actually don't have to wash it. If a dog actually licked it one time, it's the same. If a dog ate in food, the food's still valid to eat. But if he licks in, then it's mandub, it's not wajib, it's mandub. So that amr is for nadab, to wash it 7 times, which is the sunnah, and you don't need to use dirt after that. So now this section, which is not in Ibn Ashur, but it's an important section, is adab qada al-haja. Adab, which is a foundational principle in Islam. Adab, generally the things that are from the adab of Islam are mandub, they're recommended things. Cultures differ in adab, so you get protocols that go with cultures. For instance, Syrian adab is not necessarily the same as Egyptian adab or Hyderabadi adab or Lahori adab. Cultures have different things that they see as the comportment, the way you carry yourself in a society. In a classical Muslim culture, it was if a man didn't cover his head, it was seen as a very negative thing. And in fact, in the books of fiqh, it says that their shahada would be invalidated because they couldn't testify against another person because it was such a breach of the comportment. But there's nothing in the Sharia that says you have to wear a hat. So that has to do with adab of a culture. Now, obviously, those type of things have, even Western clothes. There's fatwas from the late 19th century and early 20th century that wearing a Western hat was ridda, it was kufr to do that, because Muslims didn't wear brimmed hats. The idea being, you couldn't do sajda with it. But if you go to Niger, Muslims wore brimmed hats. They have big hats that protected them from the sun when they were working out. So again, those things relate to time and place. You couldn't revive a fatwa from the Ottoman late 19th century that people who wear baseball caps are murtad or something like that. But the adab, there's a lot of things in adab that are not necessarily from the Sharia per se. But these are the adab that the Prophet ﷺ taught. So it's just that distinction between comportment in a culture which is related to culture and not necessarily from Islam per se. But Islam, the religion acknowledges that. It acknowledges culture. And so to breach those things in a culture is seen as something that you shouldn't do out of respect for or deference for that culture. Like pointing, your feet, sitting with your feet facing towards somebody in certain Arab countries is a real aib. Or taking something with your left hand is a aib. It's an insult to the person because left hand is used for impure things. So these are the adab of the culture. The adab of the religion are things that are considered mandub, and oftentimes they come from the Prophet ﷺ, but sometimes they come from the ulama, in recognizing that these are things that are important, like adab al-bahth wal munadara is a good example of that. So he says the adab of qada al-haja is julusun bi tahirin, to sit in a clean place, and then wasatrun li qurbihi, to when you become close to that place where you're going, then it should be done in a place where people can't see you, and that's why it's actually called gha'it. The ghuta is a lower area. It's ard munkhafida, and so gha'it, which now means feces, originally meant a low area, because that's where people went to do qada al-haja. Even during the Prophet ﷺ's lifetime, they did not have outhouses and they didn't have toilets. One of the first innovations, according to some of the Sahaba, was introducing toilets into the houses. Some of the early Muslims were very opposed to that because they thought it brought in impurities and also the khubuth and the khaba'ith, which is I'll talk about in a second. So, and then also the i'timad, actually putting more pressure on your left foot and raising the right foot slightly, the heel of the right foot. Now, what's interesting about that is, a lot of the problems that people have, like constipation, and also you have diverticuli. There's a lot of intestinal problems that would be relieved by this. Also hemorrhoids and things, because hemorrhoids come from too much pressure, often exerting pressure. But this actually is I've read in when I was doing nursing, I had a book that actually said that for people with problems, that they should put pressure on their descending colon. And that was one of the textbooks that I had. So this is the way the Prophet ﷺ taught. The Victorian toilet was an innovation from the English. Prior to that, everybody squatted. It's not healthy, actually, to even modern medicine knows that it's not healthy. The body's designed to have optimal evacuation of the bowels in a squatting position. So squatting is actually a much healthier way, But and now, unfortunately, a lot of Muslim countries are adopting these methods now. But this is the way the Prophet ﷺ actually taught to one of the Salman al-Farisi actually told one of the mushrikun who was saying, he's teaching you everything, and Salman said he's even taught us how to relieve ourselves. So the Prophet ﷺ, that's part of the all-encompassing nature of his tradition, but these things are very consistent with what we know. So that is something that is taught. And then also to spread slightly the thighs and to cover your head and not to look around. And this is obviously outdoors. To say Bismillah before you go in, and then also to say Allahumma inni a'udhu bika min al-khubathi wal-khaba'ith before you go into a place. The khubath or the khabith is foul shaitan, a male, and the khaba'ith is the plural of khabitha, which is the female. And the idea is that the foul creatures from the unseen world tend to be around dirty or filthy places. It's very interesting. One of the things about and people at work, detectives and criminologists know this, when they get into really like psychopathic people and things. If you see some of the photographs of the places where they live and the kind of filth and squalor that they live in, it actually, a lot of police are like, they're just overwhelmed by the filth so there's a reality to that idea. Cleanliness is not just a physical reality, but it's also a metaphysical reality. So, and then also when you leave, Alhamdulillah, alladhi adhaba anni al-adha. There's different wa'afani, there's different du'as. My favorite one is Alhamdulillah, alladhi razaqani ladhatuhu wa abqa fiya quwwatuhu wa adhaba anni adahu. And ghufranaka. That's a beautiful dua, because it's you're really thanking Allah for the food in the first place. Praise be the one who provided me with the delight of food, وَأَبْقَى فِيَ قُوَّتُهُ, and allowed me to absorb the energy of the food, قُوَّتُهُ, the caloric benefits of the food, وَأَذْهَبَ عَنِّي أَدَاهُ, and has removed from me the harmful things of the food. So it's just a really comprehensive dua about that. But one of the great blessings of life is having healthy digestion, and to be aware of that. Marab Tarhaj told me that when it said about Nuh that he was abdan shakuran, he was a grateful servant. That in tafsir, I think it's in the Sawi's Jalalain, he mentioned that he never relieved himself without thanking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is it's an important just thing to remember, that Allah can shut that down, and people who are in medicine know what incontinence is, or what being continent, somebody who has the inability to urinate or to defecate. I mean, it's just really a horrible state to be in. So just being aware of that blessing. And then also to avoid like holes. I'll just tell you one story. It was a true story. Years ago, I was in Arizona, and I was with Hakim Archuleta. For people who know Hakim Archuleta, he will confirm this story. Eyewitness. Hakim Archuleta was with me, and there was a Somalian man, Abdul Qadir, very interesting guy. And Somalis are very, they have, Somalis are dream people. They have a lot of dreams. East Africans generally are very, they're very just in tune to a kind of dream world. And so if you have any Somali friends, you'll know they have amazing dreams. It just goes with that. I think they take away the citizenship if you don't. But we were outdoors and watering. Abdul Qadir was watering something, and there was a hole there, and he started putting the water in. I think Hakim said, you shouldn't do that because some animal probably lives there. And then all of a sudden, this straw started coming out of the hole, and I was like, I looked down, I said, that's probably its furniture, right? I mean, really, that's what I said. And anyway, we went on, did what we did. That night, this is an absolutely true story. That night, we went into town for a few hours, and when we came back, the house had been robbed, and all the furniture was gone in the house we were living in. I mean, literally all the furniture was gone. You could ask Hakim about this story, and we really felt like that was some kind of jinn or something. And we took his furniture, and so he just took all of our furniture. But don't mess with the holes, So that's ittiqa'u juhrin. That's what it says. Do not urinate in holes. And that was a lesson that I learned, that's real. And also wind, this is kind of common sense, but don't urinate into wind. Don't spit into wind either, and I think everybody's done that at least once. If you're a man, women don't spit. And also on a road or a place of shade, places where people will sit, it should be a place. I mean, this is obviously, in our culture, it's quite rare, but it does happen. I mean, people have to relieve themselves on, you find yourself out somewhere. But these are all the adab of doing these things. And then also, not mentioning anything from dhikr, like Allah's name, the Quran, an ayah of Quran. In fact, some of the Sahaba used to put rocks in their mouth because they were so accustomed to doing dhikr that they would actually put rocks in their mouth when they went to relieve themselves, just to remind themselves not to do dhikr, because they were just so used to doing dhikr all the time. And then also, when you go in, you put your right foot first. When you come out, you put your left foot first. It's the opposite of the masjid and your house. The masjid and the house, you do the opposite. And again, these are some of the interesting things about Islam. But if you study the Nun study on Alzheimer's disease, I mean, one of the things they said about the plaque buildup and breakdown of mental acuity was the fact that people that were more conscious and like they did a nun study in Canada that was huge, and these nuns all they did it over several years, but they all had these habits of writing out what they were going to do and then consciously doing things through the day. And so these things aren't insignificant things in terms of just being more present, because a lot of people, as you know, are on automatic pilot out there. They just simply turn off. And being present, I like in the South Asian culture, with the Sahaba, they refer to him as Hazrat Abbas, Hazrat Umar. Hadara means presence. And so the more present you are, the more alive you are, the more aware you are. And there's people that check out entirely, and you'll meet them, I'm sure. I mean, a lot of people in monotonous jobs do that. They literally just are on, and that's why you go to the grocery store and they're just not there. And they say the same things to each person. How are you? Have a nice day. Paper or plastic. It's literally this automatic pilot, and that's why if you actually talk to them, you'll see, they come back to you, because they're just so used to going. So a lot of people are like that, and this is really about being present, about remembering. The more you're able to do that, the more rich your life is, and also the more you can become aware of your Lord. And then also not facing the Qibla or putting it to your back when you defecate or urinate. Now the ulama say it doesn't include closed spaces, if that's the way the toilet was made. But generally, in Muslim houses, if you do build your own house or have an architect, you should put the toilet the opposite direction, so that you're not facing the Qibla or with your back to it. And then also istibra is an obligation. For the man, this is to milk very gently, because if you do this, and they emphasize gently, in the books of fiqh, to milk the actual shaft by taking your finger and your thumb and just milking to get the last remnants of the urine out of the. Some people have a post-urine type of incontinence where they'll get some drops of urine. If that's the case, then the sunnah is to wet your penis before you leave the bathroom, so that you don't get waswasa. And then if you have incontinence, which is even if it's one time during the day, then there's another ruling that goes with that, which we'll deal with when we get to wudu. And then when you clean, also the sunnah was to clean with both water and stone. To use stone first. Obviously, this is today people use toilet paper. So to clean with the toilet paper first, and then to use the water. But again, these are very a lot of mental illness out there is related to urine and feces. I mean, people don't know that out here, but you'll notice. I mean, if you look at a lot of the swear words here, like if you look at Arab swear words, for instance, they don't relate to urine and feces, and it's very interesting that this culture's ways of expressing frustration and anger all relate to defecation and urination and things like that. So the gift of knowing about this and the sanity of this. I mean, there's a lot of people here that have obsessive compulsive disorder, and they feel unclean. There's a lot of people that have a sense of feeling unclean. There's a lot of mental illness that relates to feeling unclean. This is a great blessing to know this, and to know how important it is for fitrah, because fitrah people, this is really part of fitrah. This is an ancient thing. This is not like just an Islamic thing. This is a thing that fitrah people have. They know about these things, and that one should be distanced from them. So, and then finally, let's see. So, one would use, if you use toilet paper, then it would be to wet the toilet paper and then to use water, just pure water. If you only use the toilet paper with the water, it's fine as long as you've removed all of the najasa from your body. And it's also not, you should not go into, you shouldn't, it's just the outward, that's all it is cleaning the outward. And then obviously, it's an obligation to remove many urine and hayd and nifas, and then also the urine of a female that spreads past the exit lot. So she has to make sure that her area is clean before. And then also with many, if you have medhi, which is a lustful emission, either through fantasy or through touch or something like that, or if you have medhi, then the male should wash all of the his organ to do that, and with the intention of removing that. But and then obviously, there's a permissibility of using something only dry as long as it cleans. So, for instance, people that do just use the toilet paper, if they don't have water available or something like that, it does clean it. So that's basically the section on qada al-haja. Does anybody have any questions? So now we go to the section on wudu.
Mm-hmm. Where you said the toilet paper, you can wet it, and then use water.
Right.
Is it permissible just to wet it and just use the toilet paper?
Yeah, that's what I was saying. You can do that. Okay. It's just the sunnah is to do both. Yeah. And then obviously soap, even though there wasn't soap at that time, soap is a ni'mah, and the Muslims have been using soap. They used soap long before it ever came to the Europeans. So, soap is something that people should use also. And then keeping fingernails short is important. That's a fitrah thing for both male and female, to, maintain that cleanliness. So the wudu now is from a word wada'a, and wada'a is bright or brilliant. There's actually a word that I found in the dictionary that kind of really shocked me, which is called lustrations, which is it's a ritual washing with water, and it comes from luster, which is bright in Latin. So I just thought that was really interesting, that there must have been something that people were doing somewhere, the lustrations. But that's what wudu brightens the face. People that do wudu have brighter faces than people that don't do wudu. And the wudu is an obligation. Obviously, it's a condition of prayer. If you don't have wudu, then your prayer is invalid unless you've done a substitute, which is tayammum. The ulama say that if somebody is on a cross, like crucified, or if they're chained in a cell and they can't do any type of ritual purification, then the prayer is no longer valid. So that's how important the wudu is and the tayammum to prayer. The wudu in the Maliki madhab, and there's 4 things mentioned in the Quran in wudu. In the Maliki madhab, there's 7 obligations. Abu Hanifa takes just the Nas al-Quran with his obligations of wudu. But Imam Malik has 7 obligations. The Prophet ﷺ did wudu usually for every prayer. So even if you're in wudu, it's a good thing to do wudu over wudu. Nurun ala nur is light upon light. So the obligations or the fara'id of wudu are 7. And obviously you have to have ma'un tahirun wa tahur. It has to be pure and purifying. It has to be pure and purifying. So you basically and then also if it's an open container, right, then you put it on your right side. If it's a closed container, you put it on your left side. Most of us do wudu now in faucets, which is unfortunate. And when I lived in the Emirates and when I was in Saudi, and I was living mostly with Mauritanians. Mauritanians do not do wudu in faucets. They just don't. Even if they're in houses. They do it sitting down and they do it with a pitcher. And the quality of your wudu is much better when it's done like that. I guarantee you. Sidi Ahmed Zarruq said, your presence in the prayer is dependent on your presence in your wudu. The more presence you have in your wudu, the more presence you'll have in your prayer. So we tend to forget that wudu is actually an act of ibadah. It's a separate act of ibadah. That the Prophet ﷺ did wudu when he did not need to do wudu. He did it as an act of ibadah. Now wudu is really done as something that goes with the prayer. Do you know? It's just something, I have to do wudu, but the reason I'm doing it is for the prayer. Whereas wudu in and of itself is an act of ibadah. And Allah loves the people that purify themselves. يَتَطَهَّرُونَ. And so the act of tahara itself it's important. And when I saw Marabt al-Hajj, the first time I saw him do wudu, it just changed my whole perspective on wudu. I mean, it really did, because he is so present in his wudu, and it's a dhikr. I mean, it's very clear. It is a dhikr. Whereas now people go into the bathroom. It's makruh to do wudu in the bathroom, and they do it very quickly because you just want to go and get out. So doing it, if you're able to do it with a pitcher, you'll see a difference. So the obligations of wudu, the first one is dalk, because ghasal in the Arabic language means washing. Yeah, inshallah, I'll do it again. You do dalk, which is rubbing, and then continuity, which is fawr. Fawr actually means hurriedly in Arabic, and some of the ulama say that it was an unfortunate use. Some of the Malikis prefer muwalat, because fawr, they say yuhim a tasarra, that you do it fast, and it's not meant to be done fast. It's just that you do it with continuity. So you don't wash your hands and then go and stir the pot for a few minutes and then come back and wash your face and then go have a telephone conversation. That's what they mean. You should have muwalat, which is continuity. And then also a niyyah fi bad'ihi, to have an intention at the outset of it, because innamal a'malu binniyat, actions are by intentions. So the act of wudu is by intent. There are certain acts of worship where you have to have an intention, or else it's just not valid. Wudu is one of them. There are certain acts where you don't have to have the intention, the fact that you're doing it is suffices as an intent, like paying your zakat. The fact that you're doing your zakat suffices. It's always better to have a niyyah. But if you did it without the niyyah, it would still be valid. And some of the ulama say the tawajjuh is a niyyah, that you don't actually have to have just the fact that I'm going to do ghusl is a niyyah, right? The fact that you've set out to do that, or that you've set out to do wudu. But the niyyah should be removal of a state of lesser ritual impurity, rafa'u hadath al-asghar, to remove something like urine or feces or wind, or the fulfillment of an obligation, so that you're fulfilling the fard, the shart of doing wudu, or istibahat al-mani', that you're rendering the whatever's a preventive, you're removing it in order to render your act of worship permissible. So those are the different ways that you can do it. And then washing the face from ear to ear, and from the natural hairline. So if you're bald, even bald people there's a natural hairline that they know in their thing. But if you do have receded thing, then you should wash if it's where the natural thing. Once it starts going, then it's on the head. But certain people have a high brow, and then certain people have a low brow. So it's from that brow point, ear to ear. So from the pinna, from the pinna to the pinna, ear to ear, and then from top to bottom. So the chin here, and then underlying for men, if you can see your skin beneath your beard, if your beard's not thick enough, and you can actually see the flesh, then you have to go down to the flesh. If your beard is thick and you don't have that, then you don't need to do that. You just going over the beard is enough to do that. So, and then washing both hands from the fingertips up to and including the elbows. Interlace the fingers of both hands. So like washing, making sure you wash between fingers, going up there to the elbow and down. And then also getting in, making sure you cover those. And then wiping over the head with wet hands. So you take water, but it's a wipe, it's not a wash. So you don't, and then you go over the head. The sunnah is to come back, but at least going over the head to the back. And then for the women, with the braids, we'll get into that. But going all the way down. Imam Sawi, even though it's the dominant opinion is to do the whole hairline, but Imam Sawi said it was enough to do the head without going all the way down on the... and then washing both feet up to and including the ankles. So, which is very important, especially the heel. So those are the obligations of the wudu, the 7 obligations. And then the sunnah of the wudu, which are sunnah in the plural, is also 7, beginning by washing both hands up to and including the wrists. So the wrist goes up to where the wrist bone there is. And then a return wipe from the head, which is back to front. Wiping both ears. So wiping the ear and rinsing the mouth, which is to obviously put water. If it's also the siwak is encouraged. It's mandub, and you'll get in the fada'il there. But if it's enough just to rinse the mouth and then lightly sniffing water up. So you hear some people, like a kind of yogic thing, but it's actually it's a light sniff and then blowing the water out of the nostrils so right hand up and then left hand down, and then following the correct order of the obligations is a sunnah. So if you did wudu out of order, it's a valid wudu, but it's a sunnah to do it in the order of the wudu itself. And then an addition that Imam al-Akhdari mentions that Ibn Ashur doesn't mention is renewing water for the wiping of the ears. So actually, when you do your wiping of the head, and then some people go directly to the ears, that it's a sunnah to renew the water. So that would be an 8th one that Al-Akhbari mentions. So those are the sunan of wudu, and then you have the fada'il of the wudu. So the fada'il of the wudu are 11 according to Ibn Ashar, 11. The first one is saying the Bismillah at its outset. So Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. When you start the wudu, and then performing the wudu in a place free of impurity. So finding a clean place to do the wudu, conserving the water. So the Prophet used only 1 mud of water to perform it, which is actually just over half a liter of water. And then placing the vessel on one's right side, if it is open, to facilitate dipping with the right hand. Once you've washed the right hand. So initially you wash the right hand. Once you've washed it, you can dip into the vessel and do that. And the same is true for the left side. You pour it onto the right hand like that, if it's a spout type. So you either dip in. If your hand's clean, you can dip in, but you initially wash your hands, and then now also in the Maliki madhab, the water is pure even after the wudu. It's makruh to use it, but it's considered pure. In the Shafi'i madhab, it's not. The water it has a najasa from the sins, so they don't reuse the water. But in Maliki, it's makruh. You can reuse the water if you need to. So, what's that? Why? What do you mean? Because he thought that was ma'nawiyya. It's not a hissi. That the removing the sins was a spiritual meaning. It had nothing to do with the physicality of the water. So he didn't think the water was contaminated by that. But if you look at that Japanese man who did all the studies with the water crystals, one would tend to agree with the Shafi'i. I mean, it's an interesting point of the Shafi'i method. Yeah, the water that comes off of you. Yeah, like if you have, if you're in a place where you have a tray under you, and so that water that runs off of your limbs, yeah, that can be reused in the Maliki madhab. It's still considered tahur. Somebody could use it after you, exactly. Like if you were in a place and you didn't have a lot of water, somebody could use it after you. Yeah, and you would use that before you would do tayammum. Yeah. Got it? Yeah. And then also performing each washing a second time is a 5th fadila, and then performing it a 3rd time is a 6th fadila. So each one of the repeats is a fadila. To do it more than that is israf. Unless there's, like with the feet, if they're dirty and you need to make sure that it's getting down. Now also just about fingernail polish, and somebody can make a fortune if they design a fingernail polish that is water soluble. Because in Saudi Arabia, you would have like a bestseller. Because it is a problem. And a lot of Muslim women now wear finger polish and don't know that your wudu is invalid without getting to the actual. That's why henna, which is water soluble, is permissible, even though it dyes the nail polish. But to have a ha'il, which is to cover it with a physical covering, or fake nails, for instance, the wudu is invalid. And the same is for the feet. And then beginning with the limbs on the right, so beginning with on the right side is a fadila, it's a virtuous merit. And then the brushing one's teeth is tiyak. Now, you can use a toothbrush, you can use a siwak. Siwak is the toothbrush of the Prophet ﷺ that they used. That's what they had in 7th century Arabia. There's no doubt for people that have used it, if you've been in like Saudi Arabia, for instance, on Hajj or something, and people buy, because they're all over the place. They work, and they're very effective, and they're actually, your teeth feel cleaner if you use them properly than they do with regular toothbrush. But a toothbrush is fine. The beauty of the siwak is that you cut it each time you use it, whereas toothbrushes are repeated. And people know now, that toothbrushes become very dirty, and they actually become breeding. They breed illnesses and things like that. And they recommend people change their toothbrush on a regular basis. So it's a good thing if people want to use a siwak, but it's not necessary. If you don't have a siwak, you can use your finger, and that fulfills the merit of the wudu. Just using your finger when you're rinsing your mouth, put your finger in and just rub it around. The Prophet said in a hadith, and this is mentioned in the Risala, in the commentaries on the Risala, the Prophet, one of his sunnah was to floss, takhlilu asnanihi. And he used to floss with a palm fiber that he would put through his teeth. And he said in a hadith that the angels, تَتَأَذَّى الْمَلَائِكَةُ مِنْ طَعَامٍ بَيْنَ أَسْنَانَ الْمُصَلِّي, that angels are disturbed by food between a person who's praying, between their teeth. So flossing is a sunnah, and if there's any dentists in our group, they can tell you how important that is. And now doctors increasingly, because they know before you have operations now, they want you to get your dental hygiene checked, because if you have if you have infections in your mouth, it can actually affect your heart and other things. So the fact that our religion 1400 years ago had so much emphasis on dental hygiene, to me, is one of the really amazing miracles of the Prophet ﷺ, because of the importance of dental hygiene today, now, just in people's overall health. I mean, there's a real connection between really good dental health and the health of your bloodstream. And so that is a sunnah. Now, if you think about that, brushing your teeth before you do wudu, I mean, you're going to be brushing your teeth 3 times a day at least, if you're an average person. So it's amazing that this is the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. And then following the order of the sunnah in their respective order. So it's a sunnah to follow the order of wudu, it's a merit to follow the order of the sunnah. And then wiping the head from the beginning of the forehead, and then running the fingers between the toes. And then Sidi Khalil, in his book, adds as a merit that you make dua after completing the wudu. Allahumma وسع لي في داري وبارك لي في رزقي وقنعني بما رزقتني ولا تفتني بما زويت عني. That's one dua. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأشهد أن محمد رسول الله. اللهم اجعلني من التوابين واجعلني من المتطهرين. There's different du'as. Marabt al-Hajj always recited إنا أنزلناه في ليلة القدر after every wudu that he did. And I don't know where he got that, but that's something he did as a practice. And he actually recommended that. So, and he was very strict in his adherence to the sunnah. Like, he did not do things that he didn't have a...
What about drinking the water?
Yeah, no, I wouldn't drink the wudu water. I don't know about that. That might be a South Asian... I don't know. I mean, it might be. I don't know. I've never heard that. To drink the wudu water. I mean, if you're Shafi'i, they wouldn't do that. What's that? Oh, what's left over? From the pot? Yeah, no, that's fine. Yeah, I mean, that's not, that might be like something mentioned. I mean, were you taught that?
We weren't taught to do it. We weren't taught to do it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that might be. I mean, that's more like probably from people of tasawwuf. Yeah. That's a good point. Water conservation.
Maybe they're talking about when the Prophet used to use for his.
They would drink it. Yeah, no, but the Sahaba would drink his leftover wudu also, if they could get hold of it. Yeah. No. They always drank the leftover wudu of the Prophet ﷺ. So that's good if there's a righteous person, but that's not mentioned in fiqh. I mean, I haven't seen that mentioned. But, those things are the practices that people do. And then some of the makruhat of wudu, the following acts are discouraged. Exceeding the obligatory when wiping the head, so washing the head, There's people that always think that, well, if wiping's good, washing's better, that kind of attitude, but it's it's always to follow the Prophet. What he did, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, is the best thing. Washing beyond the regions specifically prescribed. So again, Abu Huraira's thing of going up into the forearm is makruh according to the Maliki madhab. And then some of the additions of Sidi Khalil, washing the limbs more than 3 times, speaking during wudu other than the remembrance of Allah. So if you're in a bathroom, you shouldn't be doing dhikr. That's why it's makruh to do wudu in, because it's sunnah to do dhikr during the wudu. So, but if you're in a bathroom, you shouldn't do that. Doing dhikr of Allah, performing. Murabit al-Hajj used to recite Quran during his wudu. So there's no specific dhikrs of, you'll find in the books these dhikrs of, you ask Allah to remove the sins of the eye, the sins of, and you'll find those, but there's no specific dhikrs with each of the limbs, but it's just dhikr generally. Performing wudu in an impure place, wasting water, al-israf, walau ala nahrin jari, even if you're on a flowing river, it is makruh to waste water. And water conservation will become increasingly important in our lifetimes. Especially young people, they're going to see there's going to be a lot of emphasis on water conservation as time goes on. So that's part of our religion. We should be teaching people that, not having the non-Muslims teach us about water conservation. And then performing each washing only once. Performing wudu using a vessel of gold or silver. Generally using vessels of gold and silver, we mentioned earlier, is muharram. If there was no other vessel, that's would be makruh to use that, something like that. The mudabbab or mumawwah, which is a gold-plated, I mentioned the other day that there's a khilaf about that. But if it's slight, then in Maliki madhab there's no problem with that. If it's like they put it around the edges or something. But generally, even if it was done for an investment, so they even mentioned like if you bought a gold vessel and then you plated it with lead, you're still not supposed to use it. So it's not just about showing off. It's about not using gold or silver. If unable to maintain continuity, one should start where one left off, as long as the limbs do not dry in the elapsed time given moderate weather. So if it's like this is moderate weather, it might be a little hot, but if you're in moderate weather and say the telephone does ring and you're in the middle of wudu and you go and answer the phone and you talk for a period of time, if your limbs are still wet, then you can go back to where you started. If they've dried, then you need to start the wudu over again. And then things, nawaqid al-wudu, a missed obligation. If one remembers a missed obligation after time has elapsed, then one need only perform it. So if there was one thing that you missed in the thing, you can go back and just do that thing over. And then if one remembers a missed obligation during wudu or shortly thereafter, then one should return to it and complete what follows in the original order after the missed limb. And then if one realizes that an obligation was missed after having prayed with an incomplete wudu, the prayer is invalid. So you need to do the wudu over and do the prayer over.
Is it about if he's seated?
Yeah, it's better to be seated.
And do you have to do any of the thought in order? Like, can I complete all my wudu, then brush my teeth, or should I do it?
No, you should do, it's actually, the teeth is out at the onset, before you actually go into the wudu. Or, you know, when you're doing your mouth, if you're going to use the finger, then to do the finger. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But it's makruh in the Maliki madhab to do siwak before the prayer, the way people do it in the masjid. He considered that. And that's very strong, I think, because he was in Medina. And the fact that in Medina they considered that makruh is, to me, very strong. And there's something kind of, to me, you know, even though I know it's in the other madhabs, it's like brushing your teeth in public, you know, which is a weird thing to do. And I think, but people do it. They pull out their siwak, and then some people put it in their shirt, and it's kind of like, you know. So, anyway. So the things that nullify, nawaqid al-wudu. Oh, then if one remembers a missed sunnah, one need only repeat it for the subsequent prayers, and the previous prayers done with the missed sunnah are valid. So if you missed a sunnah, the prayer is valid, and you only do that for the subsequent prayers. The nawaqid al-wudu are the things that nullify wudu. Urination nullifies wudu, so any passing of urine. The passing of wind, and then incontinence, if rare, إِذَا يَنْدُرُ. And rare means if it's less than once a day. Then it, so people that have, somebody can sneeze and they get a release of urine, or even laugh and they get a release of urine. Those are types of incontinence. But if it's a medical problem, then you have salas al-bawl, and also salas al-rih. There's people that have incontinence to wind, so they're passing wind. If they, these are all medical problems that the Sharia deals with. And then defecation, heavy sleep. So you have light sleep, heavy sleep, right? The light sleep is where you can hear people talking. So you're kind of in a pre-sleep state, but you're definitely not. You're not paying attention. That doesn't break the wudu. If the light is long, right, then you should do wudu again. You don't, it's not an obligation if you go light sleep for a while, as long as you don't lose consciousness. And then, you have a heavy sleep, which is where you've lost continence. What happens when you fall asleep, you get a relaxation, a complete relaxation of all the limbs, and that's why you can pass wind without knowing it. So any type of, and then you have lustful emission of fluid, which is medhi. So if you get medhi, it breaks the wudu. Intoxication, loss of consciousness. If you faint, pass out. Insanity, temporary insanity. People that just completely, and that's why, even in like talaq, if somebody goes completely nuts and divorces their wife and can't remember even that they did that, something like that, it's similar, that they've lost their wudu. And then involuntary lustless emission, which is wedi. Wedi and medhi are similar. The medhi is more, it's more less opaque than the wedi, but they're and then touching if pleasure is experienced or intended with a person from whom pleasure occurs naturally. So, for instance, what they mean by that, and they mention this, if somebody had a child on their lap or something, and there was there's senses in the thighs or something like that, that's not intended pleasure, nor is it naturally occurring type pleasure. So that type of thing would be excused. But if they touch somebody and they intend pleasure, like a kiss or touching the hand, an amorous, it would be like an amorous touch, then that breaks the wudu, even whether they find it or not. If they touch somebody, like a goodbye kiss does not break wudu. The ulama, the Malikis say if it's a kiss on the lips, generally it breaks the wudu. Just because it's مَظِنَّةَ اللَّذَّةِ. It's a place where normally people derive pleasure. But if it was a goodbye kiss that was quick, then it doesn't. And then a woman's insertion of her hand into her labial folds breaks the wudu. A man touching his penis with the inside or the sides of the palms or fingers. So it's not on the outside, but on the insides of the palms or the sides of the fingers. And then doubt concerning an event, a hadith, that nullifies wudu unless one has constant doubt. So the muwaswas is somebody who's always doubting. Those people build on they ignore their doubt. But if you have doubt, and then obviously al-yaqinu la yazuru bil-shak is a qaida, that if doubt is not removed, certainty is not removed by doubt. So if you were certain you were in wudu, and then you had a doubt, then you have your wudu. But if you doubt whether you were in wudu, you see, then you're not, you have to make your wudu up. I mean, that's the rule. Certainty is not removed by doubt. So if you were certain in the first place that you had wudu, and then later you start thinking, am I still in wudu? Unless you can remember something, the wudu is considered valid. And then obviously apostasy, because yuhbitu, it removes all of your actions. And then some of the things that Khalil mentions, abnormal discharge of sperm, many due to an abnormal experience such as being bitten by a scorpion, which resulted in a discharge of sperm, and the exit of a man's sperm from a woman's body after intercourse and performing the ghusl. Doubt concerning which came first, wudu being nullified or performing wudu. So when you can't remember, like that. And then the orders of wudu. So here, this is the order of the wudu. You find a pure place in which to perform the wudu. You place the water vessel on the right side if it is open to facilitate dipping with the right hand, and on the left if it is closed to facilitate pouring into the right hand. You brush your teeth. You say Bismillah if in a pure place. Wash the right hand thrice, up to and including the wrist. Then wash the left hand thrice, up to and including the wrist. Rinse the mouth thrice. Lightly sniff water into the nostrils and blow it out thrice. Focus your intention, niyyah, at the first limb that is obligatory to wash, which is the face. So that's at the point where you do, because that's the first fard that you move into, is washing the face. And that's the point where you make the niyyah. The intention is in the heart, and it's one of three forms. Mahallun niyyah al-qalb. But that also, if somebody is muwaswas, if they have a lot of doubt, they should say it out loud. Nawayta al-wudu. You know, I make the intention of wudu istibahatan li mamnu' or fardan li salati. So you say it out loud if you have those doubts. And then the three types: removal of a state of lesser ritual impurity, the fulfillment of an obligation, rendering the worship permissible by removing a preventive. And then wash the face thrice, including skin that is visible underneath any facial hair. Wash the right hand thrice, from the tips of the fingers down to and including the elbow, making sure to go between the fingers. Wash the left hand the same as the right hand. Wash the head from front to back once. Wipe the head from back to front once. Wipe the ears once. And then wash the right foot thrice, up to and including the ankle and between the toes. It is recommended to use your pinky there through the between the toes on the left pinky, and then wash the left foot in the same manner as the right foot. And then, so that's wudu, basically, which is the basis of your prayer. So I'll just go through these from the text here. فرائض الوضوء 7 وهي دلك وفور نية في بدئه ولينوي رفع حدث أو مفترض أو استباحة ممنوع عرض وغسل وجه غسله اليدين ومسح رأس غسله الرجلين. So the obligations of the actions of wudu are 7: rubbing, continuity, intention at its outset. One must intend one of 3 things: the removal of a state of ritual impurity, the fulfillment of an obligation, or rendering the worship permissible by removing a preventive to worship, washing the face, both hands, wiping over the heads, washing both feet. And then وَالْفَرْضُ عَمَّ مَجْمَعِ الْأُذْنَيْنِ وَالْمِرْفَقَيْنِ عَمَّ وَالْكَعْبَيْنِ. The obligation concerning the aforementioned includes from ear to ear, up to and including the elbows, up to and including the ankles. خلل أصابع اليدين والشعر وجه إذا من تحتي الجلد الظهر. Run the fingers through the other fingers of both hands when washing, and run the wet fingers through the facial hair, allowing the water to reach the skin if the underlying skin is visible through the facial hair. So those are the fard in the Maliki madhab. سننه السبع ابتداء غسل اليدين ورد مسح الرأس مسح الأذنين. The sunnah are 7: to begin washing both hands, to return from back to front, wiping the motion of the head, the wiping motion of the head, to wipe both ears. Madmadatun, which is the cleaning the mouth, rinsing the mouth. Istinshaqun, istintharu. Istinshaq is to breathe in through the nose, and then istinthar to sniff, blowing it out. Tartibu fardihi wa then mukhtaru, and then following the obligations, the order of the obligations. فضائل الوضوء 11 الفضائل أتت تسمية وبقعة قد طهرت. So 11 merits have reached us, saying Bismillah at the outset, a place that is free of the impurities in which to perform wudu. تقليل ماء وتيمم الإناء والشفع والتثليث في مغسولنا. So conserving water and then placing the vessel on one's right side is a merit, unless the vessel is closed. وبدء الميامن سواك وندب ترتيب مسنونه أو مع ما يجب. So beginning with the limbs on the right using a toothstick or toothbrush, etc. also is recommended. Is following the order of the sunan and their respective order in relation to the obligations. وبدء مسح الرأس من مقدمه تقليل أصابع بقدمه. To begin wiping over the head from the forehead and to run the fingers through the toes. وَكُرِهَ الزَّيْدُ عَلَى الْفَرْضِ لَدَى مَسْحٍ وَفِي الْغَسْلِ عَلَى مَا حُدِّدَ. It's discouraged to exceed the obligatory when wiping the head or to wash beyond the regions specifically prescribed. And then ruling of the one unable to maintain continuity. وَعَاجِزُ الْفَوْرِ بَنَى مَا لَمْ يَطُولْ بِيُبْسِ الْعَضَاء فِي زَمَانٍ مُعْتَدِلٍ. The one unable to maintain continuity should continue where he left off as long as the time was not longer than that which would cause his limbs to dry in moderate weather. Rulings on remembrance, remembering an incomplete wudu. ذاكر فرضه بطول يفعل فقط وفي القرب الموالي يكمل. Whoever remembers a missed obligation after a time has elapsed need only perform it. However, if he remembers a missed obligation shortly thereafter, then he should return to it and complete that which follows. And that's for taysir, just to make things easier for people. إن كان صلى بطلت ومن ذكر سنته يفعلها لما حضر. So if he prayed with that incomplete wudu, then the prayer is invalid. However, should he remember a missed sunnah, then he need only repeat it for the subsequent prayers, and his previous prayers done with the missed sunnah are valid. نواقض الوضوء فصل نواقض الوضوء 16 بول وريح سرس إذا نذر وغائط نوم ثقيل مدي سكر وإغماء جنون ودي لمس وقبلة وداء وجدات لذة عادة كذا إن قصدت يلطاف مرأة كذا مس الذكر والشك في الحدث كفر من كفر ويجب استبراء الأخبثين مع سلت ونتر ذكر وشد داع وجاز الاستجمار من بول ذكر كغائط لام كثيرا انتشر. So he says the 16 things that nullify wudu: urine, expelled flatus, incontinence if unusual, defecation, heavy sleep, lustful emission of fluid, intoxication, loss of consciousness, insanity, involuntary, lustless emission, touching and kissing only if pleasure is experienced, with a person for whom pleasure occurs naturally or with anyone from whom pleasure is intended. A woman's insertion of her hand into her labial folds, likewise a man's touching his penis, again with the palm or on the sides. Doubt concerning an event that nullifies wudu and the apostasy of an apostate. It is necessary to be completely free of either urine or feces when cleaning after relieving oneself. For a male, that means extracting what remains of urine by gently squeezing and shaking the penis, but avoid using force. Using stones or toilet paper, etc., is permissible to wipe off the male's urine. Using stones. It is also permitted for both genders in the removal of feces, but not if much of either has spread past the places of exit. So what that means is if somebody had a lot of feces around the area, then you have to use the water. If it was just at the exit, the point of exit, then it's enough to use the stone or to use paper alone. But if it's around, then you need to use water to clean it. That's what he means by that. So in the next section is ghusl, so we'll stop there, inshallah. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك الحمد لله رب العالمين